Feeling trapped by all the stuff? Can't keep up? No time to think or plan? Has the rush and gush of modern life got you trapped?
Slow is the new fast. Slow is the new fast.
Slow is the new fast.
Set your coordinates. It's Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. With your host, the VIP coach, John Davidson.
Thank you. This is JD, and you're listening to Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. Thank you so much for following today's show, folks. We really appreciate all the listeners around the earth that are interested in going to the next level as entrepreneurs. We have professional creators that listen to this show, C-level managers that listen to this show. We have high commission paid salespeople that listen to this show. So I'm very grateful that you tune back into the VIP Coach and the Mach 0 podcast. So we come at you about every month here, and we do a show. This is show number 2 of our Mach 0 podcast. Of course, show number 1 was about the 3 commitments. And so we went over 3 particular commitments that drive the context of this show. The commitment to self, from current self to future self, to cut that divide, to live from an emerging future possibility, to help the world see the opportunity of our most unique abilities and our personal gifts, and to trust those gifts with our life. Commitment number 2 is the connection between self and other. It's the possibilities that happen for us when we open our hearts as leaders and we seek to understand with humility how other people are experiencing the milieu or the system in which we are all a part of. And so we open up greater instruments, greater forms of perception, instruments of perception that we use. Of course, the inner enemy would be cynicism, which is the voice of disconnection. It's the voice of cutting off from our compassion, our empathy, our capacity to understand other individuals. And we bring out great work. We bring out a great quality of our being when we seek to understand sincerely by listening from other people's points of view. So rather than tell it, sell it, yell it, rather than advocate, we inquire. We begin with what we don't know. And we seek to understand the origins of how other people see the world in which they are and how they're responding to that world by trying to understand the content, the lenses, the filters through which they interact with the world that we're a part of. And then cutting the divide between the self and the whole, the third commitment. And this commitment to sense an emerging future possibility, to go to our places of knowing, not the embodied knowledge, the book knowledge, the downloaded knowledge of what we've acquired and what we can explain, but to go beyond, to create beyond what we can explain. To move into emerging futures without our knowledge, to create separate from what we know. And this requires more of what we call a third-person orientation, not first-person. Because in a first-person orientation, we are at the center of the universe, and whatever we are looking at, we must learn to see differently. We see from something called an open will, which is the opposite side of fear. We see the present moment just as it is. We see the future coming into the now, and we go to the places of potential by listening generously to something that wants to emerge, something that wants to instantly happen. And we look for cracks from emerging future possibilities that we follow, almost like a ticklish future or an itch that we have to scratch that's from the future possibilities. I call them runways. We find sudden moments of emergence of an unfolding future possibility. And the reason that we say the first commitment, the self, is because it's almost like that emerging future is using the self as a vehicle, as an enactor, as an apprentice to help that reality come into being. The 3 commitments, self to self, self to other, and self to whole, are why I've created the Mach 0 podcast. And you know why? Because slow is the new fast. That's right. Sometimes life is so incessantly frenetic that we forget to remember what really matters to us. And so we make snap judgments. We have sudden tsunami decisions that are just born out of the riptides of too much to pay attention to in life. We're gobbled up by all the technology. We've got to learn so many things while we're trying to stay in touch. That we're trying to stay up and on all of the new connections and information, and we're poking into other people's lives, and we're looking into how other people socially are newsworthy and how to make ourselves newsworthy. We're looking at ways to collectively learn, to collectively connect. And this invites a whole new set of leadership skills. I call it leading from balanced intelligence, from the head, from the heart, and from the hand. That we have to now rely on all the different sides of our perception, from all the instruments of our perception, so that we work from our minds, our open minds, and our open hearts, and our open will, from which we know how to think and act at any moment. And that by having all these openings, it allows us to draw on powers that when the complexity was much less, we may not have needed to summon. But now we must summon all the powers that we can to navigate in the volatile and uncertain and complex and ambiguous environment that we are all in our lives and in business. And so I invite you to take this journey with me into Mach Zero, where half is yet to be lived, where half of Mach Zero is not planned. And it's very similar to what I'm saying. We can't go out in business and make all these grandiose plans and stuff. Why have all these big grandiose plans when the conditions are in motion? We have to reflect in action. We can't reflect on action. We have to reflect while we're in motion. We have to find this wisdom and draw it forth while we're in the conversation. We have to draw forth, using our levels of awareness, these kinds of powers so we can tap into capabilities and potential that we haven't been able to tap into before. We need a deeper awareness of the current moment. We have to be able to smell and savor and witness and observe that which is actually taking place. Because you know what? We're inclined to just bolt right through. We'll just go right through and we'll just miss it. When was the last time that happened to you? Think of a time when you completely missed some important data that you needed to reflect on. Think about a meeting recently, or think about a situation that happened and you didn't take it in a way where you stayed looking at what was going on. You just rushed right through. You were only focused on what you needed, or you were only focused on what had to be done next. And you didn't stop and really look. This involves learning to see. Learning to see. Seeing from different places, seeing different vantage points, not just your own vantage point, but seeing from the collective whole and sensing what needs to be done and then moving there. But we have to connect with that. We have to open ourselves to connect. So thank you so much for being here, folks, for being with me on this journey on Mach Zero. This is show number 2. Now, show number 2. So show number 2 is about you, the entrepreneur, and you're ready to go to the next level, and you're an experienced entrepreneur. You've got this business, but your business has started to consume you in ways that you can't get to everything that matters to you in life. I created 2 shows before this. Or 2 sets of shows. I created the No Hype Allowed series. There's 55 No Hype Allowed shows. And then I created 25 what are called radical creativity shows. But now we're in sort of the 3rd chapter, or the 3rd phase of this program. And this is Mach Zero, making time for life one thing at a time. You're going to need a great team around you in order for you to go to new heights. I don't want you to compromise your vision. You've got some really, really big ideals. You've got some big, lofty, big thinking goals. Right? You want to change the world. You want to be first top of mind with your product or service. You want to make a big splash. You've got a lot of difference in you to make. You have to bring something to the world that no one else can. It's inscribed in your soul. You have to do this. No one but an entrepreneur knows that kind of future pull. It's not even a choice, is it? It's something so magnetic, a deep yearning or longing that you absolutely must answer. That you can't not do this. You have to. You're obligated to do it. It's what you came for. It's what your visit to Earth really involves. It's what you must do. And what you're saying is that you're not turning your back on that possibility, that you have to. You have to trust that urge, that dynamic urge, that hunger, deep, deep, deep down, that desire, which means of the king, that you must follow, you must do it. I'm reminded of the word ecstatic, which means to leave your position. Remember, the word leader is life. It means to step across a threshold. You have to live in an ecstatic way. You have to leave your position, which means you move from a territory to another territory. What's the inner work? You have to die. The word life means to die. It means something ending for something to begin. But in order for that to begin, you kind of have to follow your tracks. It's like following an animal's tracks. Where do you find their home? Wherever those tracks lead to. So in your human experience, in the creative process, when you're creating something that you deeply, deeply care about and aspire to, what are you moved by? You're moved by the heart. You're moved by something that you deeply, deeply seek to create. But how are you going to do this? Because you can't fully take responsibility for this process. It's going to require many, many minds working together. A team is a group of people who depend on another to get something done. So how are you going to get a group of people, not just to follow your lead, not just to say, well, I'll get this done because you pay me enough, but how are you going to get a group of people to say, I choose that? This is citizenship. A citizen is one who believes that they can affect something of the whole. It's a community, which means commune. It means to be held together, to communicate, to be held together in a community. How are you going to yield community-oriented energy? This is voluntary energy. Now, some of the entrepreneurs in the VIP coach program will say, but JD, it's buy-in, right? I need to get buy-in, buy-in, buy-in. As if they need to manipulate someone to say yes. They're going to sell it, they're going to tell it, they're going to test it, they're even going to consult their staff. But you know what? That's not buy-in. Buy-in is simply, I truly want something for its own sake. And buy-in involves confronting another person's freedom. It involves listening to what's in their heart, listening to what they choose to create. Not what they choose to do. This means that their job becomes an opportunity to contribute to the whole. It means, how much does it mean to them to create an organization that they care about creating? And what I find is there's a lot of filters and beliefs. There's a lot of doubts. And some of them are very, very real. One of them is that the people in the organization have tried to get your attention. They've tried to tell you you're making a mistake at times. They've tried to confront you with the truth. But honestly, you didn't turn toward them. You turned away from them. Because there's some funny opinions we have, there's some funny stereotypes we have around subordination and superiority. We think that when we have the solutions, when we hold the vision, we have something superior in us. And therefore, it's my vision, and it's my company, and I'm entitled to have you follow what I'm going to do. I pay you, you're a leased asset, and you should follow along. And I'm going to turn you into a performer. I'm going to turn you into a performer. You'll know your job description. I'm going to make it mechanical. Right. What you're doing is you're stealing someone's humanity. These are human beings. These are living systems. They're not robots. The one thing that they do that machines can't do is they create things. They imagine things, and they pursue them because they can inscribe their own meaning on their life. They can make choices. So what does that mean to you as a leader? Do you want people to have fear? You can't have people suppressing the truth in your organization. The greatest lever that you have is the capacity to move shared information over to you. If you had all the responsibility, you wouldn't depend on specialists to give you information, but you can't. Why? Because you wouldn't have a life. It wouldn't be worthwhile. Your business would be consuming you rather than serving your life. So if you want to have a life plan and you want to have a great cash flow machine that buys you some great time to self-realize, to self-actualize, to pursue things you love, that's all money really is just time. So in your case, all you're doing is earning the money to produce the time. See, you're helping someone else realize their dream by being part of an organization that matters to them. The problem with small businesses is that we have mediocre guiding ideas. The guiding ideas that drive our organization are mediocre at best. We care a lot about profit, and you should. You should create a sustainable organization that's efficient and productive and effective. You should have great assets as human beings that turn into great sales opportunities. You bet. They should be delighting a customer and making sure that we give them what that customer really needs, not what we think they need. All good fundamentals. We provide a unique experience. It's about how those customers feel by the way that we do it. It's not what you sell, it's the way you sell. It's all right. It's all good. But don't overlook the quality of conversations that you're having in the backstage with your team. Don't overlook the opportunity to inquire using your curiosity. Don't overlook the need for you to pursue things that you don't know and ask your team and follow spontaneously what those questions are. Don't be afraid to ask them the kind of organization they want to create. Don't be afraid to draw forth their personal vision because it might be different than yours. That's very confronting to them. They may have a personal vision that's very different. Have you really made it safe for them to talk about that? What are some of the things that you would do to make it safe? So we're going to take a break. This is the topic for our show. It's about being safe to tell the truth. Are you creating an atmosphere of safety? And what are you doing to create a non-patriarchal atmosphere in your organization where each person treats each other as partners? What would it be like if you had teammates that went to each other and said, "Hey, Hal, you're making a mistake. I got to tell you, I'm watching your back. Can I give you some reasons why I see what I see?" We need to learn to trust one another. Why? Because the future's too big for us not to. We have to come to terms with our own dependencies on one another. But see, in our United States, in our country, and throughout the world, it's been taught and conditioned that we should be self-sufficient, that we should be competitive. Sure, go solve that problem. You're the closest to it. And then the person does again and again and again, and then that suppresses the information that we need later. And then as bosses, we go in and we look for that information because we don't have it because we're so far away. And then we become micromanagers. And people say, "Don't micromanage me anymore." We've actually helped them react that way because we've helped them believe that needing help is subordination. Have I got you curious? All right, we're going to take a break. I'll be right back.
Having a life where you have the creative freedom to do what you love and to offer the world something that only you can bring to the table. That is the world of high-level performance with John Davidson. That is the world of radical creativity. That is the world that you can be a part of when you realize all that is holding you back is you. Begin the journey through one-on-one coaching that gives you the finesse for business and lifetime achievement. And find your place on the roadmap to high-level performance today. Visit highlevelperformance.com. Grow your business and grow as a human being with these captivating books authored by the VIP coach himself, John Davidson. The Day I Built My Barbecue is about creative freedom. Learn how you can not only live well, but also grow a thriving business at the same time. John shows you his step-by-step technique with the principles, strategies, and steps to move from a business operator to a business owner. The day you build your barbecue is the day we all wish for. Totally free of distractions, totally available to living well, fully present. Then don't miss Unstoppable You. It's about creative value. When we do what we love and love what we do, we discover ways to make our business more fun and monetize our passions. Through stories, tools, and steps, this book will help you bring something to the world that no one else can and bridge your most unique talents to the deepest aspirations you have of the future. And stand in the presence of all you are. It's about creative purpose. What does it mean to live on purpose? How do we work with the mystery that life presents us at every moment? In this book, John shows us through the silent spaces in life how to connect with our innermost sacred projects and passages. You'll learn how to bring the work, language, and presence of the soul into everything you do. Visit highlevelperformance.com to pick up any of these books in paperback or Kindle editions today. That's highlevelperformance.com. From go time to slow time. Slow is the new fast. Mach 0, making time for life, one thing at a time. With VIP coach John Davidson.
Thank you. This is JD. We're back. Welcome to Mach 0. This is part 2 of the Mach 0 show. This is the second half. And we're talking about how you, the entrepreneur, is faced with creating an outstanding team, a team that is bought in, that chooses to go where you want to go, that's non-patriarchal, non-colonial in the nature of the relationship. There's mutual respect. And we're getting into some interesting thinking around asking for help. So when the employee asks you for help, you have to confront a trap. And the trap is this, is that when someone is dependent, they look upon dependency as subordination. And then there's a funky out of that mental model of I am less, I'm one down, and you're one up, there's some interesting behavior that happens. So if I think that I'm subordinate, then I'm not going to ask for help, because then it more and more confirms my lack of importance. And so there's a restraint on asking for help and giving timely and important information about the current situation. While at the same time, you, the entrepreneur, by giving help, by being the expert, by being the hero, if your underlying need is to affirm your existence, if your need is to affirm your importance, then you're likely to come in and play rescuer. And if you do that, you're likely to set expectations of you that are not fulfillable. So if the person is not likely to commit to getting help because they have too much ego to ask, or if you turn into the hero and someone else becomes so dependent on you that they can't depend on themselves, we have some really funky mental models or stories around independence and dependence. And so just think about for a minute what it means to you to be dependent, and how critical it is for you to be dependent on the people around you, to get things done, to give you timely information, for you to hand off and delegate things that are outside your areas of best skill or enjoyment. Think about how powerful it is for you to draw forth help and depend on help. You depend on that. Your future depends on that. If you have a bigger future than your past, you depend on help. Inevitably, irrevocably, you depend on help for setting big goals and creating them. But see, there's some ideas around independence that we hold very near and dear to our identities. We think independence is making us a better person. And one of the ways that leaders help independence work against them is that they grant a lot of power to employees to the point where you, the leader, are no longer needed. So this whole talk about autonomy and empowerment, people getting results by being closer to the problem, but it depends on where you send them. You have to be very careful about where you empower people, how you empower people. Let's just play it out. Let's say that you empower a person. You say you're closest to the problem. Go deal with it. And the person does. And let's say that you don't follow up with them. So there's several things. One is they can go solve things themselves. Why do I need the boss? I don't need to ask for help. He wants me to go solve the problem anyway. And it creates what I call runaway power. Is we start to develop independence, but we forget the inevitable interdependence that never stops. And so independence defeats interdependence. And then a person becomes so powerful they start doing other people's jobs, or they begin to take authority where they shouldn't take authority, and that creates a collective problem. So we have to be very mindful about how we look at independence and how our team looks upon independence, as well as dependence. And what if we could take away any superiority or inferiority around those two things, that there is no superiority to independence and there is no inferiority to dependence, then what do we have left? What we have left is we have the potential for a common meaning. We have the potential for seeing that we both choose a future that we want to create, and that we depend on one another to achieve that. Now, we certainly have areas of talents and skills, but we realize that if we're overconfident, then we may mislead the other person in counting on us in ways that we really aren't good at. See, the fear of being caught, being insufficient, being inadequate, projects a level of overconfidence. And so we say yes, yes, yes to things that we probably shouldn't do. And employees are known for this sometimes because they want to make sure and prove themselves and prove that they're the best deal, and you hired them, and they want to let you know you made a good investment. And so they're going to say yes to things that probably they should be refusing. But there's too much on the line to show you that they're incompetent. And so rather than come at it honestly, they'd rather say yes to it and figure it out later. And this is the cause of a lot of costly mistakes, is the lack of honesty, is the suppression of the truth, especially when it comes to one's own identity, is that our egos, our self-image, inside we tell ourselves that we're inadequate in a certain way, and then we wear an outer mask, we costume that, we paint the world a false self, and then we fold or we net people into that false self. And you see that happen between boss and employee relationships all along. And even bosses, leading the employee to believe that they're more than they are. And then the boss ends up being depended on for unfulfillable expectations that, quite frankly, he shouldn't be doing that person's job. And so you see a lot of upward management. You see a lot of delegation up when the person, one, feels insubordinated by being asked something to do that they're dependent on, or they are dependent, and there's a funny stigma around dependency. So we have to confront these definitions, these biases, these filters that we have around independence and dependence. The irrevocable thing, the irrevocable quality is that we are all interdependent, that nothing is in isolation. The properties that we have are brought on by and defined by the patterns of interaction that ensue between us. Therefore, you never really know what a person is until they get into the job. The best interview is actually getting them into the job. Unfortunately, there's only so much that a dialogue or a performance-based interview can predict. And then when they get into the job, there's interactions between, there's the horizontal interaction, there's the vertical interaction with you, the leader, and so forth. One of the tangle-ups I see often is the idea around results. What will happen is the employee will come back to the leader, and the employee will share some information with them about progress being made. But you, the leader, are more focused on results, and so you tend to discount the process. And the person will come back and say, hey, look, this was good, this was great, I did this and this and this, and you say, no, but you didn't get the result. And the person feels offended and shut down, and they think that they've been marginalized. And the reason is that you hold two very different philosophical stances. You have two different takes on the economy. One is in a time and effort economy, and so the employee is looking at time and effort. That's how you get paid, is you got to increase the time or increase the effort. And so when you increase the time and the effort, that's what you get paid for. But see, you in your world, you don't think that way. No, the entrepreneur doesn't make income that way. You don't make income by time, you make income by opportunity. And so oftentimes we fail to talk openly about these two different views, that we're living in one economy and the other person is living in another economy. And so they clash, but we can't quite put our finger on why. And so we're constantly told that no one can meet our standards. No, they actually can. They're just looking at things in a different way. They have a different lens on. And so we haven't talked about what's possible in the results economy and how the blueprint, the thinking, the anatomy, all of the content that goes into looking at things as a result economic view is very different than the time and effort view. So maybe it's time to take your team aside and talk about being a results economy team and what would be the tenets involved and what would be unacceptable. And so you start off on a new language. You kind of commune around the idea of what would a results-producing team be like. This is a very key thing. The other thing is that employees can learn without subordination, without identifying with being subordinated, to clarify more of what your expectations are. What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? They might ask, how is the criteria of success going to look in your mind? You may have a different criteria for success than they do. And so we have conflicting expectations. Yep, you have job descriptions. Yep, you've done it by the book. You've got standard operating procedures. But what you might have overlooked is that they have a different take on your criteria for what means success in the job. Or maybe you haven't talked about long shot what the point of the job really is, or what the point of the task is, and they're missing the context. And so they have a whole different way of looking at what's priority and what doesn't. And so your priorities are different than their priorities. And you know where that's going to go. That's going to run into disappointment and frustration. You're going to be let down because you're going to expect something by end of day, but their perceived sense of urgency was different than yours. So again, it might make sense backstage in some of the time when you go to work on your business, when you go back there and work on your team and look at these things, is to have an open, transparent, and honest conversation about the results outlook and also talk about the expectations or criteria by which the job should be done. As such, have a performance profile of the job so the person's clear on what success means in the job before you assign it to them. You might break it down in 3 to 5 key objectives or performance objectives that the job needs to furnish in order for the individual to be considered successful. That way you're benchmarking actual performance to expected performance from the same evaluation matrix. Very, very important. So when does this team building piece start? How do you begin to kind of inbreed these people into your bloodline, into the family that you are? Every business is a very cult-like atmosphere. I don't care how small you are, how big you are, you have cult-like qualities. If I go into your organization and I ask people, how do things get done around here? What do you do? What do you not do? They'll immediately tell me. They'll tell me, oh, this works, this doesn't work. Don't go to so-and-so. Don't tell so-and-so this. There's all these unspoken principles and rules that guide and drive behavior. And so I'm going to look at those. I call this the mimetic structure. Meme. M-E-M-E. A meme is a cultural idea or standard that's migratable from one mind to the next. It's a transgressed idea that moves from one mind to another, and it becomes a governing structure. And a lot of times these governing structures are brainwashing. They're not intentional brainwashing. They're brainwashing by osmosis. We don't really consciously think about how we assimilate or learn this way of being or acting. It's a little bit like tying our shoes or putting our clothes on in the morning or putting toothpaste on our toothbrush or putting the car in drive. It's all unconscious behavior. A lot of organizational behavior has gone to this automatic level where we're acting and reacting out of the principles that we've been washed in our minds by rather than being conscious. But we can see our own seeing, right? We can see this washing pattern of how we tend to bring forth behavior and responses based on things that we've been washed by, things that we've been conditioned by. So we can intentionally stop our conditioning by raising the levels of awareness just by talking about, most of the time, our feelings and actions and reactions and behaviors and the results that we're getting are stemming from the very mental models or attitudes that we have about each other, about the world around us, and about ourselves. In fact, most of us on a team are operating from a conceptual cloud around those 3 things. This is who I think I am, this is what I think the world is, and this is what I think other people think. And then without our awareness, without being vigilant, without interrupting these patterns of thought, our habitual judgments start to set us in motion. And then the next thing we know, we truly believe that our teammate is uncaring, or they're not worried about someone else, they're out for themselves, and we start to galvanize that into a belief. And then we act out of that as if it's factual. We don't leave it behind as an observation that was dated at a certain time. Instead, we bring it forward like a reflex, and then cognitively, every time that we see that condition popping up, we're inclined to condition our response. We go on the defense mode, or we do something. So while we tend to look through these lenses, we start to move ourselves in the realm of our biases. Our focus determines our reality. And yet it goes unnoticed. So how do we start to pull ourselves out of these things? We make a conscious decision to have better moments of awareness. We teach, train, and cultivate a high level of awareness. We cultivate a mind, a mindfulness, that can see mindful, the content of the mind, that can watch thoughts as they play out before they get the best of us. We can be on watch with our hearts to watch our cynicism so it doesn't put a distance between us and the other person, and we can watch our fears. We can watch what our fears are predicting is around the corner, and we can disrupt and invalidate our fears before we can convince ourselves that it's truth. We don't have to believe what we believe. We have a choice. We don't have to respond the way we respond. So instead, what I like to teach is that a team make a choice to fundamentally be the predominant creative force in their team. Rather than reacting and responding better and somehow arguing with thinking, it's not just about that. That's part of the process. But so that a team can learn how to work together, there has to be a higher order of ideas. The higher order of ideas, vision, mission, values, BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. These are some of the predominant ideas that we choose to create, not because the circumstances say we should, but because we love them enough for its own sake. We aspire to create these because they just matter to us. There's no further thinking needed on that. It's the point of everything that we're doing. It's the cul-de-sac behind the cul-de-sac. It's where we reach the end in our mind and then operate backward. We look at our decisions, actions, and communications now, and we organize them accordingly. It's an anchor. So what does our team want to create? The most powerful question that we can ask is, what kind of organization do we want to create? Listen to the question. What do we want to create? What do we want to bring into being? The question is, what are we deeply concerned about that we want to see exist in the world? And that is where we start. That's where we start to govern our own ideas. That's when what we need to do on behalf of that whole is obvious to us. We don't need to wait on assignments. We don't need permission, right? We don't. We can take initiative on our own accord because we see the entire whole and we know what we need to do within it. And a team is a group of people who depend on one another to accomplish that. So the equitableness and the fairness is naturally going to grow out of that. That's a seed that's going to give birth to a branch. And then out of that branch, we're going to grow into some shrubbery and tree. We're going to grow into a trunk. We're going to have a formative form that's going to come into being through us. It's like jazz. It's like music. We start to play the song together, and the song becomes the song. And as we play it more, we begin to learn together on what that is. How do we do that? By having an intention. By claiming a future intention that we truly aspire to create. By choosing that alternative future. How does that start? It starts by having words that describe it. A world is in a word. So a team starts to get their hearts around meaningful words that disrupt the conditioning of the past and bring forth greatness. It's been said that anything puny in the team, all those walls will be brought down by having something greater to attend to. Any puny BS, gossip, all these stupid things that organizations sometimes counterproduce, that's because we don't have something better to do. People do what they do unless they have something more compelling to do. So if you want to rock your team's world and you want to have thoroughbreds in the stable and you want to get people working together, you better look at the nobility of your guiding ideas in the organization and take an honest inventory. You may not have enough. You may not have enough gravity in those guiding ideas to override manually some of the petty BS in your organization. So if you want to get rid of infighting, if you want to outgrow some of the competitiveness, if you want to outgrow some of these deadly things that happen in organizations that hurt people, then start listening to your team. Start responding to what they're saying to you and tell them what you're doing about it. Follow your curiosity and try to understand them better with an open heart. Don't go into things with what you know. Try to go into things with what you don't know and ask the questions that come to you from there. Be humble and be curious and accept people just as they are. That's what love is. Love is accepting the legitimacy of another person. No matter what they are or how they do it, it's allowing another person to be legitimate just as they are. You know, I once heard a great story about this where a great leader said to an employee who came into his office and said, I need to change this, I need to change that, I need to be this, I need to be that. And he stopped and looked at her and said, what are you talking about? I don't want you to change anything. I want you to be exactly how you are, and there's nothing wrong with you. She turned to him and came to tears. Not even her own parents, not even her own coaches growing up in athletics, not even her own teachers, nobody in a position like that had ever told her that she was absolutely fine and acceptable. And from that day forward, she got off all those fixtures that she had to change in herself. And she released that. And instead, she started to focus her energy and attention on what she sought to create. And the minute it changed from identity, from first person, into a third person urge to drive her actions and decisions, she became Employee of the Month. This is a person that lit it up every single year and went into management in seconds flat. This is a person that was obviously a lifer in the organization. And then she had a great course for learning because she decided to work on what she wanted to desire and work toward it and learn toward it rather than work on herself. We become aware in organizations that self-improvement doesn't work. If we have a team of people that are always looking at their deficiencies and everyone is our project, then the message is something is wrong with you. We need to get off this. The message is nothing is wrong with you. The message should be, what kind of future do you want to give your life to? I hope in this conversation that you, the listener, have taken away one or two really great tips that you can go right back in your organization and get some immediate results, get some immediate value from what we're talking about. If you'd like to know more and you want to be held accountable and you want to follow the track of the VIP coach, we'd love to talk to you. Maybe you're planning on leading from a more balanced intelligence this year. Maybe you've decided to really help the world see the opportunity of you and step up to your most sacred projects and gifts. Maybe it's time to inspire yourself into more creative freedom and be the real artist that you are, not the engineer or the economist anymore. Maybe it's time to evoke leadership and provoke quests with your team to go beyond and take them into a new frontier where they've never been before that makes their lives worth living. Whatever it is, whatever dream you've got, our job is to be a faithful companion on behalf of that dream. With us, you have an outstanding wingman. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to www.highlevelperformance.com. We've got a great website there. Visit the VIP coach. Or maybe you'd like to have some help for the C-level managers in your organizations. Maybe you're building a portfolio of enterprises and you want to bring them to a new standard. We can handle those kind of projects as well. So I look forward to speaking with you at some point. The number is 714-912-9261. Thank you so much. This is Mach 0, show number 2, Making Time for Life, one thing at a time.
For more tools, go to highlevelperformance.com. Better business, better life. Fast growth, keeping things simple. Or visit us on Facebook. Mach 0, Making Time for Life, one thing at a time. Set boundaries, focus your attention, and maintain a positive state of mind. Hire a VIP coach to help you. Call 714-912-9261.